Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act, 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news, reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use. First Maccabees 2:10. What nation have not had part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils? Call Halal, Yahawashi, Yahawashi, Ba'ashem, Qadash. Double honors unto the apostles and the elders, the elder bishops. Salutations to all my fellow laborers, to the scattered elect that are scattered around the four corners of the earth, that be like unto the speckled bird, the Israelite foreigners who look like the other nations. And to the Aquaf that are listening and learning, to you I say Shalom. This is your brother Malcolm from the branch of the Great Millstone here in Chicago, coming at you with another lesson in truth. And this was a very fiery video that was put up by the Young Turks, and which made me rethink this guy's, ethnicity. Is it possible he's a Jake? I've always believed for a very long time that this McAdoo chick, the lady on there, that she's definitely Jake. And I believe that through the spirit. Him, I've never, this much I will say. I have never seen anyone passionate for the plight and suffering of Jacob except Jacob. That's what makes me believe this. Now, it could also just be a scripture, which I'm going to read, every hand of the wicked, meaning the other nations, turning on Esau. It could very well be that as well. But nevertheless, that's not what the video is about. The video is about the truth that he speaks, all right? And how there's a portion when she speaks, why they don't want to teach history in school, what they call CRT. And she said, and she just tells the truth and says, that's American history. And it is. And that's why it's shameful and they don't want it to come out. So without any further ado, I'm going to, actually, let me read one more scripture, then I'm going to play some of this video. This is Ecclesiastes 9 and 13. And it reads, this wisdom have I seen also under the sun. Nope, that's not it. Salakia, that is not it. I wrote down the wrong thing. So, I'm gonna come back to that. So let's let it play, and then I'll try to find that scripture that I was looking for. So here we go.
Incredible, because while they try to paint Ahmaud Arbery as some sort of savage, right? Let's talk about who the real savages are here. I would argue the real savages in this country, not just
take
this
this
trial,
sound
not just
up. Hold
this
on.
case, but in this country are the people who prioritize private property and protecting private property over protecting human lives. There's no evidence that Ahmaud Arbery engaged in any type of criminal activity or that he burglarized a house that was under construction. No evidence whatsoever. But even if there was evidence, who cares? That justifies shooting and killing people because of precious material items? Really? I would argue that's the savage behavior. Savages don't value human lives. That's what savages are. That woman right there, she's the real savage who's trying to justify the murder of a man who was jogging by referencing his toenails, when in reality what she's doing is justifying the murder of a person who did absolutely nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong. And I mean, I don't know, since we're just picking on random things to justify murdering people, I don't like that suit she's wearing. Look at that ugly suit she's wearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, how would you guys feel about that woman walking into your house wearing that ugly-ass suit?
Not even your house, your neighborhood. If she's walking in the
I
neighborhood.
would not want to see her walking on the sidewalk in front of my home wearing that ugly suit.
And if she doesn't have a pedicure, I mean, she looks like a savage. Now, you don't want to turn her into a victim. Look, guys,
This is Ecclesiastes 3:16. This is what I was looking for. And moreover, I saw under the sun the place of judgment, that wickedness was there, and the place of righteousness and iniquity was there. So it's nothing but wickedness under the rulership of Esau Edom. All right, nothing but wickedness.
We don't want any of that. We don't want any of that. We don't want lawlessness. We don't want chaos. But we're tired of...
We're there.
We're tired of right-wing...
Wait, she said we're there. She said we don't want chaos. And she said we're there, and we are. Let me grab this scripture. Job 20 and 22. And it reads... In the fullness of his sufficiency, he shall be at straits. Every hand of the wicked shall come upon him. And that's what's happening, because all the nations are showing their hatred toward Esau Edom, toward these Idumeans, towards these small hatters. All the nations. All right? And as he's going to give testament when he begins to speak, that he's been a victim of racial hate, and he's seen it and experienced it himself, being a non-white male, all right, throughout his lifespan. And he's just gonna let it all out.
Terrorism that has been done in this country for centuries. Look, I don't want to... When they attack black people after they've been murdered, when they did absolutely nothing wrong, you're pushing us to the limit. And what do I mean by that? You're asking us to talk about history, the history of the South. This is in Georgia. What happened in Georgia? There were savages in Georgia. It was the ancestors of the white right-wingers. They were absolute savages. They murdered people. They lynched people. They raped people. They enslaved people. They took babies from their mothers and sold them as property. You want to talk about savages? Your ancestors were the biggest savages the world has ever seen. So don't you dare call a black man a savage after you murdered him. Don't you dare do that. I'm so sick of African Americans being called violent when the world's worst violence was done to them, not by them, to them, not by them. For God's sake, you want to do racist stereotypes? If it fit anywhere, and it doesn't. But if it fit anywhere, it would certainly fit.
And he's so right. This violence was done to them, not by them. All right? And I mean, that's just what it is.
White right-wingers of the South, who has hundreds of years of history of being savages. Savages. They snatched babies and they sold them as property and they raped their mothers. Savages. That's what they were. You want to talk about stereotypes? Screw all of you who still defend that Confederacy, that monstrosity. Anyone who defends that is a barbaric savage.
That's why they don't want to teach American history in public schools. That's why because American history, what they call critical race theory, what he's talking about in Georgia, that is American history. That is how you got the suburbs. That is how you got your banks and your colleges, all your businesses and your organizations. That's how it happened. All right? I was trying to find something in this book, a hidden heroism.
And this may be the part that I was looking for. All right, it was a portion about a woman there, although what I'm reading is pretty horrific. That wasn't what I wanted. But for the sake of time, I may end up reading that portion anyway because it's ready on deck. Because you have some pretty brutal atrocities that took place. Let me let that play. Maybe I can find it.
There's been a strong orchestrated effort to prevent the teaching of anything that you just mentioned right now. Because, hey, God forbid that, children learn about the real savages in this country's history.
Oh, yeah. Children learn about the real savages, and the Lord gave it to me. Because this book is full of, this is the book of hidden heroism. All right? And basically all these soldiers that fought to keep America, make America great, and did all these great things in the wars and helped establish the supremacy of America, then were burned, hanged, and killed upon their return to America. This is on page 108, and it reads, no sooner had America entered the war to make the world safe for democracy than lynchings in the South increased in number and in brutality. In 1918, there were 62 lynchings, one of them, and those are the ones they're just telling you, all right? It was many more. One of them of a pregnant woman who had threatened legal action after her husband was murdered. She was tied to a tree upside down, doused in motor oil, and set on fire. While she was still alive, screaming in agony, her abdomen was cut open and the unborn child was intentionally crushed under the feet of the mob. A few days later, a member of the mob that had killed her gleefully boasted to Walter White, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man who easily passed as white but identified as black. All right? There's a lot of that. All right? It says, Mister, you ought to have heard the nigger wench howl. In 1919, the return of the troops, 77 blacks were lynched, at least 10 of them veterans still in uniform. 2 of these men were burned alive. Surprisingly, white police occasionally managed to fight off mobs bent on lynching prisoners. During the summer of 1923, which is a lie, they opened the doors willfully. During the summer of 19, they were participated. The cops, the mayors, the lawyers, the doctors, they brought their whole families, and he's going to explain it. During the summer of 1923 in Savannah, Georgia, police killed one white man and badly wounded several others while refusing to yield a black prisoner to a white lynch mob, but the local authorities rarely intervened in lynchings. A Vietnamese visitor to the United States at this time named Nguyen Sin Kung made himself an expert on lynching by a practice that appalled him. Even though he did not feel personally threatened by it, he collected clippings such as the following notices from newspapers. All right. Today, a Negro will be burned by 3,000 citizens, New Orleans State. Negro J.H. to be burnt by the crowd at Elliston this afternoon at 5 p.m. Jackson Daily News. So they made announcements of it. They celebrated their wives, their children. And so the newspaper was involved. So everyone who's that worked for that newspaper and all the owners, hey, look, they're all guilty. The mayor, the police, the lawyers, and you should be able to, and there's town records to this place. You should be able to track these people down. All right, but let's let it go.
Right. Let's go ahead and dehumanize people over their toenails, but let's also erase the part of our history that, yes, is dark, that's awful, but it's the truth.
You know what white right-wingers did in the South? And they did this for hundreds of years. In a lynching, they not only hung the person, they burned the person, and then they cut off their genitalia. And in the midst of doing all this, I swear to God, you could look it up in the history books, they had a picnic around the body. And then they would take home pieces of the charred body for memorabilia. They would have the kids, their kids, go pick pieces of the body off. And then after they did all of that, they had the temerity to call black people violent. No, no more, no more. You don't ever get to call a black person violent. You don't ever get to do that. So if you're a white right-winger in the South, don't cry about, oh no, my beloved ancestors. Your ancestors were not beloved. They weren't. They were monsters. So I said it because it's true. How you react to that is up to you. You can say, hey, that was terrible. They shouldn't have done that. Let's get better. Or you can say, I kind of love that history. That proves you are just as racist. You just don't.
This is Habakkuk 2:16. Thou art filled with shameful glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of Yahawah's hand, of Yahawah's right hand, shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be upon thy glory. And see, they gloried in this history for a very long time. And now the history is coming out to shame them, and they don't want to hear about it. They don't want to know about it, and they don't want because they want this picture to be painted of them as being pure and white when they're not. They're not white. They're right. Their skin color is red, fleshly pink and red. All right. And there's nothing pure about them. And they didn't read the fine print, because there's a part 2 to manifest destiny, the payment part. All right. This is Revelation 18:6. And it reads, reward her even as she has rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works. In a cup which she hath filled, fill to her double. So everything I just read and everything you just heard is going to come back upon them double. Call Halal, Yahawashi, Yahawashi, Qadash, 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 Kwam Yasharala.